It turns out the universe is filled with energy, mind-boggling amounts of energy. As we like to point out, 1 cubic centimeter of vacuum, according to modern physics, can be calculated to have energy that can produce more mass than is in the observable universe. There's plenty of energy in the pure raw vacuum. We need to find a little process to get just a little bit of that, even the most inefficient process imaginable. 10 to the minus 80th, for example, is a great efficiency for this, and we can do that. The point is we do not live in a closed system. That's the old physics. The new physics, since quantum mechanics, the vacuum is a source of energy, but it's a peculiar kind of energy. Let me explain the peculiar kind. When a bird flies in and sits on a power line, he sits on a very high potential. But between his 2 feet, he has no potential difference, no voltage. And so even though from the line to the ground, it may be 100 million volts, to use a theoretical figure or hypothetical figure, the little bird can sit very happily with his feet on this supposed 100 million volt line, and he has no volts across his body. He's very happy and doesn't even know it. Let him touch one of his feet to the slightest thing that has the slightest difference there, and he'll fry to a greasy spot. Now, in the vacuum, we have the same thing. We have an extremely high potential or charge of the vacuum, but we're immersed in the vacuum. And so the question is, we are like the little bird. Normally, what we put in the vacuum, we don't have any difference between 2 pieces of our machine, so we can't get a current. An analogy I use of tapping a paddle wheel in the river, what we tap the energy from is the current of the river, not the pressure in the water. And so our problem is to find a way to tap the pressure, so to speak, rather than the flow, or to convert the pressure into a flow. That can be done, and we can tap the inexhaustible energy that's in the vacuum, and it has been done. And when we do that, we can get plenty of clean, free electric power, right, straight from the vacuum itself. So, do I believe in free energy? I can prove conclusively that the energy is there. Nature has been very kind. We are free to do anything that we are smart enough to discover how, but we've got to use our brain and our mind to discover how. But the mechanism is there for us to do it. I fully believe that. And inventors I work with, I will state point blank, at least, 2 of the very brilliant inventors I work with have produced free energy devices that are real and do work, and I personally have measured and dealt with the devices. They're real, they work, it can be done. And so it's an energy which has the aspect of restoring the biosphere and restoring life. For example, it's clean, so you wouldn't have all the pollutants from burning fuels and so forth, and for the nuclear byproducts and so forth. It's very clean fuel. You have absolutely nothing left but just energy. And you can transform it from either negative to positive. If you need the form of positive energy, you can do that. You can transform it back to negative, and you can reach a very nice energy balance in nature. It has some other very positive benefits that don't show at first glance. The Earth, Sun, and Moon are connected not only by radiation of the normal electromagnetic energy, the external scattering stuff, but the half that's left out, the internal hidden energy. If you pollute one part of this system, the pollution feeds and spreads to the whole tri-system. Literally, we are polluting not only the Earth presently, but we are also polluting the Moon and the Sun in the scalar components. And that's what is gradually being radiated back to us. And so the very vital part of the energy that living systems have to have continually to be living systems and maintain their life is slowly being affected. And of course we need to clean that act up right away, because that's the worst kind of pollution we can possibly have.
地球、それは大宇宙の宝石、創造の絶えなる奇跡、そしてそこは人類のホームグラウンドである。しかし時の移ろいに人類は誠実さを忘れ、地球に対する謙虚さや思いやりを忘れ、地上に害毒を振りまき窒息させようとしている。発明家ニコラ・テスラはこの危険性を予見し、無公害エネルギーである魔法の波動を世界に供給しようとした。しかし 彼の努力はすげなく拒絶された。
Tesla gave you multi-phase power. He gave you AC power, the practical transmission of electrical power, the rotating electromagnetic field that made motors and generators possible. And so he literally helped you bring in the electrical 20th century. Had it not been for Nikola Tesla, your cities would still be dark. You still would not have electric power, and you'd still be struggling around in the dark. So yes, Nikola Tesla was important to us. Had we listened to Tesla about the other parts of the magic wave he had discovered, he would have given us cheap energy. I delivered a paper in Ottawa, Canada, where I gave the actual mechanism by which his amplified transmitter, his magnifying transmitter, actually worked. There are over 1,000 papers in the scientific literature that show that mechanism is real. It would have worked, and he could have given the world cheap energy. You could not, however, have had a power meter on that you sell it to folks. They could have tapped it cheaply and freely just for building the antennas and putting in the taps. And so the powers that be suppressed Tesla and Tesla's work because of the fact that he was going to get the power meter off of your power. He would have given you cheap energy and cheap power and clean power. He did give you radio, he gave you fluorescent lights, he gave you the things that made motors and generators, and he gave you the electrical 20th century. He would have given you a lot more had we listened to Tesla and funded him.
テスラはその才能をもって電気と磁気の法則の知識を深め、その実用化は次のエレクトロニクスの世代に希望にあふれる光明を与えた。彼は社会に絶賛される志の持ち主であった。彼は電流を一切使うことなく電球の明かりをつけてみせた。私は独学によって一世一代の成功を収めた。そして私の願いと私の意志が一つに結晶するまで研究を続けた。とテスラは述べたのである。
He was a magnificent genius. And had he been funded to continue his work, the world would have been 100 years further in science than it is today. Here some 80 years later, so to speak, after the collapse of his magnifying transmitter. And here we are trying to rediscover what Nikola Tesla was doing right at the turn of the century. And so we're almost a century behind where we should be. That's the importance of Nikola Tesla.
進歩は前進のプロセスであって後ずさりのプロセスではない。それは成功への花道であり、だからこそ不測の事態を恐れぬ研究者を勇気づけてくれる。この原則が守られなければ何の進歩もありえない。
Wird auf etwas gesetzt, was man Fortschritt nennt, das aber nie wirklich definiert wurde. Ich meine, die technische Neuerung alleine ist noch längst kein Fortschritt. Eine technische Innovation kann nur dann Fortschritt sein, wenn sie mit einem Schritt zur Humanität verknüpft ist. Und das ist es, was ich vermisse. Kernkraftwerke sind kein Fortschritt. Wegen dieser ungeheuren Gigantomanie der Bauwerke und der zugemauerten Betonflächen und der Risiken, denn hier spielt man mit einem Feuer, was nicht gelöscht werden kann. Und der Risiken ist das zutiefst unhuman. Und so kommen dann diese riesigen Komplexe zustande, insbesondere diese militärisch-industriellen Komplexe, die letztlich alle darauf hinzielen, dass man eben im Namen dieses Scheinfortschrittes praktisch die natürlichen Grundlagen des menschlichen Lebens zerstört, sodass die ganze Gesellschaft praktisch eine Gesellschaft aus Chaosmenschen wird, die praktisch in einen globalen Suizid gehen.
カナダのある研究所では今真の前進がなされつつある。ジョン・ハッチンソンによって光と宇宙の法則の真の重要性が解明され、彼はそれらの知識を用いた実験によって大自然の調和性の理解へと至るのである。大自然と調和した人類のための科学は多くの分野においてその価値を発揮し、現在の窮境を打破してくれるだろう。ハッチンソンは電磁力の分野と物質の分子構造の変化について研究を続けてきた。彼は反重力に関する知識を開拓して、目に見える推進方法を一切使わず 空中に重い物体を浮かべることに成功した。また電磁波の衝撃にさらして物質の性質を変えるという大発見も成し遂げている。アレクシス・ペザーロはこう語っている。これらの実験の結果は加熱することなく金属を液体に近い状態に変えられることを示している。固体の金属がゴム状になる。そのプロセスが一旦理解されれば、いかなる物質もその形態を変えることができるのだと。
I immediately realized that this had tremendous significance. It had significance in space, it had military implications, and its understanding could possibly open up a whole new energy source.
ハッチンソンは物理学を宇宙の法則に適合させた偉大な科学者の一人であり、科学を未だ知られざる世界へと導き入れて、次の世紀を迎える人類の科学に新たな弾みをつけることだろう。
Some of the work of the lone inventor, John Hutchison in Canada, Vancouver, Canada. Hutchison takes two Tesla coils and essentially puts in the center of them a target, and every target has certain nonlinearities, and then blasts away with these two coils at them. Basically what he establishes is an electromagnetic fighting itself, electromagnetic forces fighting themselves. And gravitational force is made when a gravitational potential is made when electromagnetic forces fight themselves to a draw, when, in other words, the gradients become zero. The gradient vectors or the resultants become zero, but the two forces are still in there slugging it out. All the energy is still going, the work is still going, but it's trapped locally. That's internal energy. That's what gravity is. And the Whittaker paper tells very well how to do that. So when John got things just right, he didn't have control of it, absolute control, but he bored in there with persistence, and when he got things just right to get the forces to fight to a draw, and there was the right nonlinearity in the target, he would have levitation of things even 64 pounds. He would also, another thing you do with such a thing is you cause the magnetostatic potential to change a vacuum. In other words, that's pole, an unfortunate name in magnetism. But in other words, it causes deposits of monopoles inside materials such as metals. And you'll literally have the monopoles repel each other, and you'll have the explosive separation of metals into all kind of grains and structures according to the waves in the Tesla coils that you're bombarding it with. And so he produced magnificent breaks, Hutchison did, in metals and splits as if it were Venetian blinds. And another thing it does, since this stuff comes from the nucleus out, it doesn't go through the electron shells. Its medium is the nuclei. What you have then is you have changes in the atomic nuclei, which result in lattice changes. You have the production of alloys, which cannot be made in this world with normal processes. And some of those alloys appeared in John Hutchison's work as a result of that kind of bombardment. Another thing you have is once charged with scalar radiation, the nuclei then continue to discharge over a long period of time. And so the material continues to change, alloy form and so forth, over a period of even a year. And you had those changes occur in his work also. He was reproducing and has been reproducing some of the work of Nikola Tesla, and even some of it going further. But that's what he's doing. What he's doing is real. And unfortunately, most people regard John Hutchison as being a little bit off and not really understanding electromagnetics and not really understanding a Tesla coil. Nothing could be further from the truth. He's doing the real electromagnetics. He's doing the kind of electromagnetics they don't know anything about. He's doing electrogravitation and real Tesla work.
The technology that we are aware of is quite staggering anyway. But then there is also the technology which the governments are putting together, which we don't know about. And they've obviously got their own reasons for their secrets. But if we had any comprehension of how advanced this technology was, then I think people would then begin to realize that even our own people are far more advanced than they would believe. And once they can realize how wrong they were in this direction, then they can start to wonder, well, if we are as advanced as this and with no idea of this, is it not feasible that there is something out there which is more advanced than this? And perhaps all the technologies which are being put together at this moment in time are catching up on our alien friends, which I very, very much doubt. But I'm sure that is the reason this technology is being put together. You've got to realise that things are not always as they seem. And once we can get out of this thinking, out of this box we're in, that there is something more than what we are being taught, what we have learnt. There are things outside the scope of this. Then I think you'll begin to see the potential for people from out there visiting us. And not just now, not newly visiting us, but have been visiting us for hundreds of years.
君たちの太陽系を我々が訪れているのは、君たちの進化のプロセスと環境の変化がどのように起こっているかを知るためである。我々は特殊な観測システムを使用して起こりうる困難を予見し、必要とあらばその困難を克服する方法について助言を与えたい。その目的を達成するため、我々は多くの観測機器を用い、多方面の科学調査を行っている。さまざまなサイズの遠隔操縦円盤機を使用して正確なデータを入手し分析しているのだ。環境汚染の問題から微生物が引き起こすさまざまな病気の問題まで、君たちの世界で起こるあらゆる側面を我々は見守っている。また我々のテクノロジーは君たちの思考パターンを記録し分析できるので、君たちのあらゆる次の行動を全て予測できる。君たちの世界のことで我々の気づかぬことは何一つないのである。
The truth about UFOs may be painful for us to face, and this might provide a continuing rationale for the government to maintain secrecy. But the truth will and must be known eventually. Continuing our denials and fears, in my opinion, are only adding to the problem. We are all in this together. In a time of opening relationships with the Soviet Union, we have the potential for radically demilitarizing our foreign policy, reallocating those resources toward preserving our planet and opening ourselves to the global village. Part of that new reality is embracing the unknown and the possibility that we have visitors beyond the Earth or beyond our dimensions of time and space. We must enter our new openness in peace and without recrimination. Our government of the people, by the people, and for the people needs to be involved in the process, not as a hostile, separate, secret unit. I therefore advocate an orderly, non-vindictive congressional investigation of UFOs and a change in government policy on supporting research in these and other phenomena. The late philosopher Joseph Campbell once said that we are living in a time in which our ignorance and our complacency are coming to an end. It's time we let go of our fears and evolve to a higher awareness of ourselves and our place in the universe.
Maybe the cover-up was in our best interest, maybe not. Maybe the government underestimated the intelligence of the American people and decided we just couldn't handle it. But let me tell you this, the truth is still the truth, and nothing can change that. Not the military, not the government, and not me.
However, in the last few years, there is an evolution in the whole extraterrestrial problem. An evolution so far that the sightings and the encounters become more concrete. We accumulate more and more cases where we get more and more information. More information is released by the governments. We know now that there was a cover-up for so many years. We have always speculated about this cover-up. Now we have proofs. We know that the secret services, not only in the United States but in other countries, have really fooled the public. And very likely extraterrestrial visitors know about this plot. And it is not surprising that in the last years more concrete information is released. Probably this may be a preparation for official contact. Perhaps it's in the interest of extraterrestrials to establish contact because humankind is in a very difficult position. This does not imply that we must depend on extraterrestrials to save our planets. We have to do it ourselves. But nevertheless, we are in a phase where we possibly take the next evolutionary step, a step that is so important because it will decide whether we will survive or simply vanish.
I oscillate between pessimism and optimism, and there's every reason to be pessimistic about the future. Every sign of disaster is coming upon us ecologically, population explosion. There's so many reasons why the present system can't continue. So the real question is whether humanity becomes extinct, civilization collapses, whether that happens, or whether somehow we go through a crisis and emerge into some new relationship with each other and with the natural world and with the spirit that lies behind the natural world and works within it. And I'm an optimist, so I hope that sooner or later we'll arrive at this new state of harmony. But I don't think we'll arrive at it just by waking up one morning and finding it's happened. I think that we'll have to go through a crisis first.
人類はその歴史上多くの危機に直面し、その都度その危機を克服してきた。人類は巨大なパワーを持ち、限りない可能性を秘めており、それを結集して自分の思考を反映できるコンピュータさえ作り上げた。人類は物質を視覚的に変化させる能力を持つ複合体であり、その知性を生かして宇宙からエネルギーを引き出し、あらゆる生活必需品に変えるだけの能力を持ち合わせている。思考はエネルギーであり、エネルギーは万物に影響を与える。それに関連するテクノロジーは戦争を根絶する平和のテクノロジーでもある。誰かがこの可能性を発見するのはもはや時間の問題であろう。
If we can create in the laboratory, without any doubt, a mind-over-matter interaction that's a few parts in 10,000, certainly all you have to do is extrapolate that a little bit to come up with a mind-over-matter mastery that could happen later in our own development, and certainly what seems to be true in some of the UFO visitations. And of course also we have various case studies like Sai Baba being able to materialize and dematerialize things in his hand, or various forms of levitation. These are all things that are very real. They're not, drummed up by people. It's just that our ability to face that reality has been quite compromised. I should have known all along that the so-called new physics, in a way, actually makes all of this possible. That in a way, we physicists have kind of forgotten what we're all about. Einstein one time said that the whole purpose of science is to awaken the cosmic spiritual feeling. And we scientists are among the last to embrace that.
大宇宙はエネルギーそのものであり、万物の生命液である。人類もそのエネルギーの一部であり、いかなることも達成できる可能性を秘めている。科学は今、全てを可能にさせるこの巨大な知識の宝庫に踏み込む門口に立っているのだ。事象のそのような把握を妨げるものは、痛みを伴う変化に対する恐怖心だけである。生きている大宇宙という概念は、これまで我々が正しく評価できなかった斬新極まるコンセプトなのである。
Contrary to the popular view, it can be shown and conclusively proved that that has an internal structure of incredible order and beautiful order. It's filled with electromagnetic waves going in bidirections. Pick a frequency, there's a wave going in one direction and a wave in the other direction. The wave that's going backwards is an anti-wave. It's a time-reversed wave. And the vacuum is structured. This potential, a vacuum is just potential is all it is. This potential is filled with a harmonic series of these waves. And so it structures spatially by bidirectional wave sets. And it structures vertically in terms of harmonics. Now, if you then invoke this structure, and you do that with a nonlinear material, and you put in one wave in the nonlinear material, that material will take from the vacuum that excess structure because it turns everything into a potential, and it will put out multiple frequencies and harmonics. That's what nonlinear materials do. Interestingly enough, if you take time-reversed waves and put in those harmonics, when they back up through, they will restore one wave. You can gather the energy and collect it and integrate it together and produce a single thing of much greater energy and lower frequency. And so what you have is the vacuum structures in frequency and spatially, and the connection are waves. And by the way, these waves do not have to move at the speed of light. They can have much greater velocity. Now, the importance of Whittaker's work is that he showed that if you were to take sets of waves that you made on the bench, you made a wave and its anti-wave, and you made the harmonic and its anti-harmonic, you'd have to have at least one interval. In music, we would call that an octave, you know, from C to the next C, for example. If you had at least one octave or one harmonic interval, you would then have a structured vacuum. Now, you can build such sets as these any way you wish to, and each one of those sets is a special form that you can build on the laboratory bench. There is a set, for example, that contains the electromagnetic parts that generate typhoid. That's Kazanashiev's work, and that's Kazanashiev's death photons that have been shown to carry death and disease. That work has been duplicated in West Germany, or Germany now, and also has been duplicated in Australia and here in the U.S. It also explains the work of Antoine Priori, who built a machine under the proper scientific auspices and under rigorous testing on lab animals, which cured cancer and leukemia almost 100%. Some eminent French scientists worked with him. It's still in the French medical literature. It was real, it existed. It was squelched. But what I'm saying is, if you use the Whittaker approach, you can now, for the first time, understand how Priori's device worked, because that's what it did. And he used a rotating plasma to make his phase conjugates. We didn't even know about the phase conjugate in those days. Today, we know that one of the things plasmas do under the right circumstances is phase conjugate, or time reverse. And he showed that you can cure cancer, leukemia. You could just as easily set a pattern that would cure AIDS. He showed you could clean out clogged arteries. You could change the immune system, increase the immune system, bring it back up, which would be very valuable to AIDS patients, for example. For every disease, there is a pattern which causes the disease in this structure. For the cure to every disease, you simply take its pattern and time reverse it, and you get the precise electromagnetic antidote. You then put that inside a potential, as Whittaker showed how to do, and you treat the body with that, which is like like normal electromagnetic radiation. It's not ionizing radiation. It's not nuclear radiation. Expose them to a rippling magnetic field, for example, with these embedded in the field, and you cure the disease. And that's the kind of medical treatment we ought to have, not this cut them and burn them and poison them type thing that we have now, and many of them still dying with cancer and leukemia and AIDS. It would take about 3 years. It would take a team of about 30-something people, facilities and so forth, in about 3 years, about $20 million a year to deliver the ability to do that kind of electromagnetic treatment.
Yes, our knowledge grows rapidly in almost every discipline. Conservative scientists in the past, or if you like, futurologists, have always been too cautious, too conservative in their estimates. We know that there's a turnover every 5 years of doubling our knowledge, with the consequence that we have a completely different view in the world. Most people can't even keep up anymore with the advance in science. They have problems understanding modern computer science, cybernetics, biogenetic engineering, or nuclear physics. We talked today about great unified models of the natural forces. The man on the street can't keep up, and he is only superficially informed about new aspects. We don't know what will happen in 20, 50, 100 or 1,000 years. However, there's one thing we do know, that whatever happens in the future, science will have advanced far more than we can possibly think of today. And no imagination, no fantastic model that we may produce today will justifiably come close to the actual advance in 1,000 years.
We really do have, right now, available to be born a completely new and drastically extended and drastically more capable physics, which unfortunately 4 nations of the world have weaponized but kept secret from their citizens and from the rest of the world. And what I am saying is that it's high time that instead of just using this in secret to build more weapons to kill more people and hurt more people or control more people, what we need to do is bring this out in the open and let's use it for the positive benefits, to heal people, to give them cheap energy and clean energy, to clean up the biosphere, to clean up our whole act, to be able to heal all these diseases and this kind of thing. That's what I'm saying we've got to get on with the job.
君たちの地球での生活は君たちの科学やテクノロジーの進歩にかかっている。君たちの政府が我々の進歩したテクノロジーに初めて接した時、彼らには恐怖感と戦慄が走った。彼ら権力者は権力を得てあらゆるものを所有し、あらゆるものを支配するのが本性だからである。それゆえ我々から得たテクノロジーを公開しないのだ。テクノロジーは全人類の利益のために使われるべきであり、自由世界を構築しようと志している者の手の中に委ねられるべきなのである。
I think the first point in overcoming any difficulty or any problem or any crisis is to have the faith that something better is possible. Without faith, without trust that it can work out better, without the vision of something greater, it won't happen. So I think we have to have some kind of vision, some kind of faith. In traditional Christian terms, this is the idea of the kingdom of heaven. And most visionary schemes in the West are under the influence of this Judeo-Christian model, that at the end of history there'll be a new era, a new dawn, a new age, the kingdom of heaven, a utopia. Well, I mean, there are many different ways of formulating this. We have to think this. I think it's built into our whole civilization. It's very difficult for us not to think this, or at least if we don't think it, we despair.